Previous basket is under review.
I'd like to think that Scout Team has somewhat become the de facto international hoops show of the Basket Under Review Network. I know we have a lot of folks in the Discord that know international hoops. Armand's obviously chiming in with players. Certain guys have made models and things like that. It's really cool to see. It's always entertaining. I was in a Buda Havas and Doman Petrovic conversation about Florida earlier today, but yeah, I would say of the pods, we're staking our claim. We're the international guys. We did an episode last week with Joaquin Bunche and Nicola Kusturica, and now we're going to dive more thoroughly into the international preview and do a couple episodes here in the coming weeks about some of the guys you should really be paying attention to headed to college basketball this year, Fawcett. And just before we get into it, I wanted to talk kind of briefly about the state of the international market. Beyond some of the eligibility conversations, which we'll see how they shake out. I think there's a lot of narratives this is the best international class ever. This is X. This is why these guys are going to be so impactful. As someone who is probably uniquely positioned, as someone who spends a lot of time watching European basketball and has a great knowledge of the level, and also watches a ton of college basketball, I'm curious your perspective on the market movement, because to me the biggest change is like the level of not even the level of talent coming over, but the level of proven production coming over that has really changed. And part of that's the 22 and 23-year-olds that are attempting to make their way to college basketball. We'll mention a few of them right off the top in this episode. But is it fair to say that this class is unlike any other, even compared to last year, in terms of the talent coming into the college system?
Yeah, first of all, it seems definitely deeper, and I think that's one of the things that always comes into, like, whether you're evaluating a recruiting class, an NBA draft class. Now we're talking European recruiting class. There's always okay, well, do you mean it's like strong? Like when you talk about it being strong, is that the top 5 guys? Is that depth up and down? And I do think there's a lot of strength at the top, but I also think that there's just a level of depth and something in Europe that I don't think a lot of college basketball teams or fans kind of realizes. When you're talking about some of these European players, a lot of them were brought up living near the teams that they played for, the clubs they played for, and these clubs invested in them from the time they were 14 or 15 years old. So there was a little bit of a feeling with some of these guys of loyalty that they weren't quite sure if they should jump. And when there was guys right at the top of the market getting what people think, they're willing to jump. But I felt like that kind of second tier guy, a lot of them were still feeling pressured, whether that be internally from their community, that like, oh, you don't want to jump. Well, like that is gone. Like these guys are just kind of all ready to go. And that's where I feel like the level of depth is remarkable. And I also feel like this year we're seeing such a better, I'll use the term better, such a better spread of talent across college basketball, where even last year in the college market, I felt like there was still a lot of coaches that were not willing to spend on guys from Europe, like they would to pay guys to be starters, to pay guys to be stars. There was a couple of teams that did that, and you can probably think, as I say that, who they are. Now there's a lot more teams that saw that and said, okay, I maybe we don't know a lot about European basketball, but we're going to go and try to find out, or we're going to trust the guys that send guys elsewhere. So that's the other piece of it too, is I feel like we're getting a lot more of the kind of second tier talent of that age group in Europe. And we're also seeing it spread out a little bit more across college basketball. But in terms of like, if the term is like, oh, like better class, worse class, whatever, I do think that this year's class as a whole will have even more impact on the whole of college basketball than last year. I guess that would be my statement.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I also think just like, number one, like the money has gotten to a point where guys cannot say no. Like Saliou Niang was not. So, and this is he's our second video today. We're going to do Quinn Ellis and Saliou Niang 1 and 2. And funny enough, Quinn Ellis had like a pretty significant role in Saliou Niang considering college, because he was steadfastly against college. He was against it last year. He wanted to go through the draft instead. He got drafted and stashed by the Cavaliers. He goes through much of this season, again, playing at a very, very high level in Italy. Did not want to come, heard how much Quinn Ellis made and was like, yeah, so I probably can't turn that down. Right. And there's gonna be a lot of that. And there's a lot of guys, I think, that at the end of last summer cycle started hearing about what a De Ridder could make, or what some of these guys coming over from Europe could make. And that made them a lot more intrigued by college. And there just wasn't the spots available at that point. And then you have a whole cycle now, right, of guys that were able to, take advantage once they were starting to hear about what money was available, the role, the opportunity, et cetera, in college basketball. And so, it's a different world. Again, I've spoken about this. The age of the 22 and 23-year-old coming over will not be permanent, mostly because the most talented guys, like the Saliou Niangs of the world, will want to be here at 19 or 20. They'll want to make money longer. It's a much better, like it is not like a small gap financially between what you can make in college and what you would make overseas. It is, wide ranges apart, millions apart in some cases. And so guys will take advantage of that. It's a very cool opportunity for college to add some of these guys. And, I think it's a good transition into watching the first guy, which is Quinn Ellis, because this is a guy who was a starting point guard in the EuroLeague, the highest level of basketball in the world outside the NBA, and said, I'm going to go play for Rick Pitino for a year. And maybe 2, depending on his eligibility situation. But I'm going to go play for Rick Pitino, and I'm going to make a ton of money and be one of the best players in college basketball. And he may not be the flashiest guy. That's part of the reason that he is not in the NBA right now. But he is as safe an investment, I think, as you could make, because I don't see a world where a guy who is this good at this high level isn't pretty darn good in a college basketball environment.
Yeah, I think people really remember when Rick Pitino said, we don't have a point guard. There's no more point guards anywhere. He yearned for a point guard, and he just went and spent what he needed to get one. Like you said, this is a guy that played at the highest level of the sport in Europe. And again, that's something that I kind of get annoyed by when people talk about European basketball and they'll say oh, this guy was a EuroLeague player because they played a couple of minutes of garbage time. This was a starter on a EuroLeague team that was playing 25 minutes a game. And to see that he's got that kind of polish and responsibility of a guy that is playing 25 minutes at point for a high performing team in Europe, he does bring a lot of that kind of just make the right read, take what the defense is giving you, and make something happen. You can see, again, not super flashy. He settles for the pull-up a little too much for my liking, but he's capable of making them. He's not super creative, but if he gets a straight line to the rim, he's going to take it. And I think that, again, he probably lacks a little bit of the flash that, it takes away from his NBA potential. But from a college standpoint, he does the simple things really, really well, including that really compact, quick left-hand jumper. And I think that's also when you look at just okay, well, what does Rick Pitino basketball look like? What does he really want from his point guards? He wants someone who can guard and play in transition, play fast, get guys the ball where they need to, where they need it. And again, this is where you see he's not super explosive, but if no one stops him in transition, he's going to take it. If someone does stop him, he's going to make the right move. He's going to distribute. And I think that is going to be something that really works in the American style of game, in that Rick Pitino style. And then I also think just defensively, EuroLeague, every game matters, and they just don't really have time for guys to develop or for guys that can't do something like defend. So is he an absolute lockdown defender? No, but he's got a little bit of that craftiness that you see from guys that play in Europe, and he is very responsible on that end. And I think that that's going to be something that's pretty interesting. And again, when you're trying to look at his distribution and passing, nothing flashy, just makes the right reads. And I think that is where, when I watch him play, there's part of me that's this guy played 25 minutes a game and started on EuroLeague team. He's just going to eat up college basketball. But then, I don't think he necessarily has a lot of the high end upside from a guy who can just be super high usage, make everything happen. But that's also probably not what St. John's needs. And if you're just looking for a picture perfect point guard for a coach that didn't have one and really wants one, that's what he is. And I think you see a little bit of where, you maybe wish he was a little creative. He is I think he might be listed at 6'4", and you can see he's got great size. He doesn't totally use that size because, again, he's a little bit more of a pull-up guy where it's not like he's getting to the rim and using that length. But just does everything like a professional, looks like a professional. I think he's going to be really good.
I would be shocked if Quinn Ellis was National Player of the Year or first team All-American. I'm not quite to that level just because of the way he plays. But I would also be more shocked if he wasn't like an all-conference Big East level point guard. Like if he's not one of the 15 best players in the Big East, that means something went really wrong for him, or we need to like really reevaluate what the level of college basketball is versus the rest of the world. Like I think that's probably fair to like put it this way. His backup point guard on his team this year was Nico Mannion. Nico Mannion, who is a one and done, stud 5 years ago in college basketball. Like Nico Mannion averaged 14 and 5 assists at Arizona in 2019. And that guy got beat out by Quinn Ellis to be the starting point guard in Milan this year. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. This is a high level guy surrounded with really good players. Again, no moment will be too big. This was a good way to spend your money. If you were St. John's and you're like, we want a point guard that we know we can trust. Like he's probably a safer bet, assuming he's eligible, than any player in the portal at the point guard position, in my opinion. So big fan of him, certainly. I think a guy with a little bit more upside, but maybe a lower floor, is Saliou Niang, who we just mentioned, was a draft and stashed by the Cavs in 2025. Big, athletic. Again, a guy who is playing pretty substantial minutes in the EuroLeague, averaging 7 and 5, averaged 9 and 6 in the Italian league this past year. Limited shooter, but a big time body and some interesting kind of playmaking ability. Intrigued by him, and he'll be a centerpiece of what LSU's attempting to do, even as their roster remains somewhat in flux.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun, and it's to watch because he's like this open floor athlete who's just causing chaos all the time. And when you watch these clips, it's like funny to see that he just like did not want to play college basketball, because I feel like he's just built for college basketball in terms of just like athletes out there making plays. That's what he does. And I do think that when you look at why he was even just a little bit limited in his minutes, it's because he struggled with a bit of the processing speed required at the highest level of the sport in Europe. But it's also one of those things that like they couldn't fully keep him off the floor because he would just make something happen and create a steal or dunk on someone. And you watch his kind of play and transition and ability to finish, like that's going to play in college, I think, at a very, very high level. The one area that he did play really well, and I thought was this kind of short roll game, and he was someone who could go and catch the lob, but you could also throw that ball to him early, which is what you need to do against all these aggressive pick and roll coverages in Europe. And he's had some good hands and some good ability to, again, be able to survey the defense. Do I need to pump fake? Do I need to use a dribble? Whatever the case may be, he's got a little bit of that processing speed, and I feel like that's something that I feel like they can utilize him as. Was able to make wide open shots at like a 32% clip. So like, not useless out there. That's something that will be, I know the NBA draft people love, a swing skill for him, but even if he doesn't shoot it, I think he's going to be pretty effective. And then the other thing I'm watching is this kind of post-up game, because didn't post up a ton. It was mostly against switches, but he was really able to take advantage of switches on the block. And I thought really showed a lot of nice touch. So if he's also someone that you can throw the ball into on the block and create there, we also know that, Will Wade has had a lot of success with guys that in the past that were these kind of like back to the basket post-up guys. So that'll be something I'm monitoring too. And then of course, just like defensive playmaking. It's not just like the raw physical tools, his like anticipation, the way he runs hard in transition. Like he has more like chase down blocks like that, like not like LeBron athletic chase down blocks, but just chase down in the sense that like he sprints back, he races everyone down the floor, he gets himself in a position where he can make a play, and then he can use some of that length. But a lot of fun to watch on the defensive end as well. And he is someone that I watch, and I feel like he is just so suited to the college game. And that's, of course, something we talk about all the time is like, oh, this guy is, in a vacuum, a good player, not just in a vacuum, but in the European setting, a really good player. But what does it look like in college? I'm curious what you thought watching those clips, but to me, this looks like a perfect college basketball player.
Yeah, I think he'll be really good. The challenge, and this is again where, I think the conversation is interesting. Saliou Niang is going to be like one of the highest paid players in college basketball. Like this is someone that, again, I haven't seen the contract, not going to claim I have. I was told by multiple sources, other schools involved, NBA sources, that his deal is north of $5 million. Like this is a guy that is in like the very, very, very upper echelon, like being paid like a first team all SEC player. And in general, his archetype is not an archetype I'm itching to pay like that, right? Regardless of how good he is, regardless of questions about, will it be a bumpy ride to get eligible? Will it be a bumpy ride for him to adjust to college versus playing in EuroLeague? Like all of the other questions about like the translation, like I feel good he'll be a good player. I just would not be itching to pay this guy $6 million, give or take. Like that is scary to me. And I do think, again, LSU is in a weird position in that they don't have a budget. They have as much money as you could imagine. They can spend however they like it. I would not have been prepared if I was LSU and I had access to that capital. There would have been different angles I would have taken. But he is just like a really good player, and again, a disruptive force that I think will be a much better college basketball player than EuroLeague player. But yeah, does he need to be a top 10 player in the SEC to return that value? Yeah. And that I'm not quite there on yet. So that I think will be the interesting conversation with him is like, was the juice worth the squeeze? And it is one of the challenges of going into Europe is like, this is a guy who is by all accounts in a very comfortable situation. He had gotten to a really good club. They seem to have, given him good responsibility. He's spent much of his life in Italy. He plays with the Italian national team. Like college was a money grab in a lot of ways. Like this was, and you had to overpay to convince him this was the right situation. And I think that is one of the challenges with recruiting Europe right now is you end up in spots like that where it's like, all right, like for him to return the value you're paying him compared to a portal guy, it's going to take him being, a top end outcome for his season. But yeah, I mean, hard to argue with the likelihood that he'll be good. Just not sure he'll be great. Next guy up, really excited about this one. This is a last name that junkies will be familiar with. We're talking Owen Foxwell, who's off to Wisconsin. His brother Joel was epic for Portland this past year, beat Gonzaga basically on his own. This like small dynamo pick and roll player. And Owen Foxwell had looked at college last spring. It didn't come together. I believe was planning to go to LSU to play for Matt McMahon. And then that blew up. Wisconsin jumps in. They have connections in Australia and New Zealand, and take a big swing here because this is a guy I think that can, step into that high usage role. We've seen the last couple of years what it's done to be John Blackwell and John Tonje and Nick Boyd and AJ Storr on the wing, like guards who have gotten a chance to really touch the ball in this system. Chucky Hepburn have really done well for themselves both that year and beyond. And Owen Foxwell seems like he's next. And quite frankly, with the way that their roster is built, with two more like shooter types in Trey Autry and Ian Elmer, there's going to be a ton of usage available for the guy. And I'm fascinated to see if he can take advantage of all of it. But if I was an agent and I was trying to figure out like, how can I best position my guys for success in college basketball, I'd see what Greg Gard and what that offense has done for other guards and be really excited about it. And I'm sure that resonated with Owen Foxwell in his camp.
Yeah, I'm excited for it because I absolutely love this player, and the creativity he shows in pick and roll is spectacular. First of all, I mean, this guy is just like push shot Jesus. Like, wait until you see these shots every time he comes down the lane. He loves these little like crafty floaters, which again is not a great shot for everyone, but he hits them at a really high rate, and that's the way he kind of deals with a lot of the size and athleticism in Australia. But when you're looking at what those players you mentioned did so well for Wisconsin, it's the pick and roll because they ran that continuity ball screen that we talked about, and they need guys that can create and take usage, and he can absolutely do that. He's got downhill creativity and that ability to finish with craft. He's also got that really quick pull-up game, this really compact shooting stroke that he can get off from just in an absolute hurry, and he can get it from a lot of range just because he doesn't have that like really high jump. He keeps his feet on the ground, jumps off with a lot of power. But where he's at his best to me is this kind of downhill game and using all that craftiness that sets everything else up. And as much as someone is as much as he plays with some of the like physicality and just like strength as a driver, he has so much deception with those changes of speed. And then of course caps it off with a crafty little floater there. So I love everything he's doing, whether it's in isolation, whether it's in pick and roll. He just finds ways to create advantages and score. And the thought of him bearing down on a college basketball center in drop coverage, I think he's going to have no problems. And the fact that Wisconsin is going to put him in so many of these empty side ball screens, he's going to be able to either score for himself or make plays. And then we see some of this craft on the passing side as well. But what I also absolutely love that we'll see here shortly is his ability to defend and make plays on that end. He is just an absolute scrapper, and Wisconsin fans are going to absolutely love it. We're showing a lot of the flash and skill here, but when it comes to the way he defends, just like every play he finds a way to get his hand on the ball, and just every play ends with a tie up, ends with a ball out of bounds. Like let me tell you, like, opposing teams might absolutely hate this guy. Wisconsin fans are just going to love him. He's just absolute scrapper, absolute playmaker. And he's just someone when you watch his film, you just cannot take your eyes off him on either side, because he might do something incredible on offense or even back in defense. Oh, the other team's got a layup. Oh, no, he has really crafty hands to come up with a deflection. Like, just absolute playmaker. I love this guy. I think he kind of enters college basketball. I'm not saying he's going to be the best international player that comes to college basketball, but I think he might be the most fun to watch.
Yeah, he hasn't gotten talked about nearly enough, I think. Just again, given, the talent meeting the opportunity. And again, this is a guy, and it's the lowest hanging fruit to be like, let's just list off all the guys he's playing with and against in his pro team. But like, he is a starter in the NBL. Here are like some of the other guards, like American guards that you've heard of, that are playing like similar minutes and roles to this guy: Kendrick Davis, Bryce Cotton, Tyson Walker, Tiger Campbell. This is like a really high, there's some really good players. I mean, Australian guys like, Parker Jackson Cartwright was a really good college basketball player. Matthew Dellavedova is still kind of kicking around, playing professionally with Sydney. Like, there are some awesome players in this league. And he earned a pretty massive role. Again, this is also a grown man. This is someone who will turn 23 in August. He is very much ready to make a big impact in college. And love watching him. Maybe a little bit maxed out physically. You're not going to be impressed by the length or the athleticism or the burst, but just a really fun guy to watch, and someone who I think will thrive playing in this wide open Wisconsin system where bigs who can step out and make shots and open up the floor. I love the fit there. The NBL is a really good league. He's going to be really fun to watch. Last guy we wanted to hit on is a guy who really raised some eyebrows here in the last week at the U20 Euros with his home nation of Slovenia. He was playing in Ljubljana, which is the home big city in Slovenia. Got to have a home Eurobasket and absolutely dominated. Was the MVP of the tournament. Played really, really well. Mark Padjen, again, to be clear, he's going to Murray State. This is a big-time mid-major win for Ryan Miller. This is a high-major player. And this is not like, this guy was a diamond in the rough. Like, this is a guy who was recruited heavily by high-major schools, both last spring and this spring. Saw the opportunity at Murray. And Murray also has a large NIL budget. Like, this is a guy who is going to make, high six figures. You could argue he's worth more. But this is not like a guy who's just like hunting opportunity. This is a guy who's, a legit high major player, and certainly showed it here this past week at the U20 Euros, and, played, significant minutes in the Adriatic League this past year. Was a really good player there. We've seen guys translate from that to college pretty well as well. So dive into those clips and give the floor to Fawcett here.
Yeah, I think when you look at players at this age group, sometimes if you just do one thing really, really well, you can dominate even a tournament as good as this. What just strikes you like about Pageant is just he does everything. And when you even look at this short tournament where it wasn't like there was a ton of games, he scored as a pick and roll ball handler a number of times. Then if you also look, he scored a million times coming off of screens, whether attacking downhill or whether pulling up immediately. So, okay, with the ball in his hands, he scored. Without the ball in his hands, found a way to score. Then in isolation at the end of a clock, he just got a matchup. You want to just take someone one-on-one, doesn't need a ball screen, one-on-one, make something happen. Scored in that way too. So it's like, okay, well, you could score with a pick and roll. You could score coming off screens. And yeah, if it's just a neutral advantage, you want him to go one-on-one, no problem. Get to the rim, shoot from 30 feet. No problem at all. Oh, also, he was a really, really smart cutter. We saw him again playing off the ball, making great reads. Anytime there was a chance to get some kind of easy advantage, he was like, yeah, I think I'll just take what the defense give me. They're denying me a little bit. I think I'm going to go back door, get something easy. We saw that too. And then, of course, in transition, someone's trying to pick him up full court, this kind of semi-transition break. Yeah, no problem. Burn by him, score. Like, I'd love to like tell you exactly about how I think he's going to fit in with what Murray State is doing, or exactly what I project him to look like. But I just watching in these events, that's just what struck me. He scored in every possible way imaginable. He even had a couple of like pick and roll plays where he was playing as the big and he rolled. He pick and pot, like this any kind of play type of basketball you could think of as a way to score. He did it. So I just thought that was something that was so impressive, was like the versatility at this age. And I think you kind of tied the bow on this perfectly when you're just like, it's just a high major player. You don't need to like think past it. Yeah. You don't need to like think about how this happened. This is an incredible basketball player. I think every penny that Murray State paid for him is going to be worth it. I'm really excited to see him play.
Yeah. And this is a loaded team. I think you'll have a huge role, but like, these are some of the guys he is competing with for on-ball reps. I mean, Roman Damone is probably the best returning player in the Missouri Valley, had a monster freshman year. He's someone that can play with or without the ball. It's like this big jumbo wing playmaker. You have him, it's, Pageant at 6'6", who, as we said, can play in ball screens, can short roll, can kind of do everything. You have two, American transfers in Christian Jones from GW, who, was a starter in the Atlantic 10, probably a slightly above average one, certainly a good enough player to play and have a big role at Murray. Caden Magwood was a top 60 recruit, went to Auburn, didn't play. A year later, he's bouncing down. And then even like Mathis Corbone, who was good for them last year. Talis Sulhak was, the starting point guard of the French U20 team. He's very good. Talis Sulhak's recruitment last year was Murray State and North Carolina. Like, this is an embarrassment of riches. And I think the question mark in a lot of respects was like, would they have one or two guys really step up and be a stud, or would they just, there is diminishing returns to depth in the, especially at the mid-major level, right? Like, you can only put 5 guys on the floor. It's great that, Murray State's 10th man is better than UIC's 10th man. There's only 5 of them playing, but this is a loaded starting 5 and a loaded kind of top 10. So excited to see who wins kind of the iron sharpens iron. And that would be my only reason to hedge my bets at all on Mark Padjen as being like one of the best, if not the best player in the Valley this year, is just the reality that he's competing with other guys on his team for roles and minutes, and may not get the same freedom he had with Slovenia here this past week.
Yeah, that's a great point. But I think that's where, looking at just the number of ways he was able to score, it's going to be something that's going to be fun to watch, because also I loved how Murray State played last year. I thought they showed a lot of creativity on the offensive end, and they'll put these guys in spots to be effective. So I feel like this is not going to be the last time we have talked about Murray State. I feel like a video on them is probably likely to happen at some point during the season, and just an embarrassment of riches there. And I'm curious to see what Coach Miller does to put these guys all in positions.
I did ask Coach Miller. I saw Ryan in Vegas during Summer League and EYBL. I did ask him what it's like getting all these guys off the plane from Paris and landing them in Murray, Kentucky, and if it's a culture shock. And he said, look, a lot of the guys that we've gotten from France and from Europe come from kind of the countryside. They're not used to the city life. Might be a little harder if they were, but they see the opportunity here at Murray, and just an incredible. Again, it's a great combination of really good resources, agents and players seeing the opportunity, a coach who has deep relationships over there spanning back many, many years. It's a perfect storm, and excited to see what it looks like, because I think the ceiling is certainly very, very high for them to be one of the best mid-major teams in the country. Looking forward to that. More international guys to come, Fawcett. At least one more of these. If you have, anyone in the comments or on the Discord want to chime in with ideas or guys you'd like to see us cover in the series, we'll do our best. We can't do everybody, obviously. We've got other ideas to bring the show through the off season. But if you've got names that you haven't heard and you want to hear about or watch some film of, I think we would be more than happy to do our best. So we appreciate y'all watching, as always. This was Scout Team. Please subscribe to Basket Under Review, the Discord, the YouTube channel, the website, all phenomenal. And it's the only place 365 days a year you'll see college hoops talk. The top 50 countdowns on. Shout out to the 3-man weave. We'll see you all next week.